Hey everybody, I'm back again to do, let's call it the official pre-release video of the Brown Sound, the IK Multimedia Brown Sound 8284 Signature Collection. This is Diver Down and 1984. That's hence 8284. This one has been a thing. This has been a lot. There are a ton of moving parts, especially in 84, and there's a lot of unknowns. So I just want to cover a few points before we jump into this. A little bit of my methodology and how I approach this. I know a lot of you know this, but a lot of you don't. So I kind of want to just touch on it. So the further into the Van Halen catalog that we get, the available information of what really went on gets sketchier and sketchier. You know, there's been a ton of assumptions. There's a lot of theories. I like to call it lore, you know, and a lot of statements. And those statements have been made by those that were there or were told by those that were there to others that weren't there. So it's really hard to know. So I'm going to present some theories, back them up, you know, the way I always try to do. You know, I weigh all of the available information, the forums, all of the articles that have been written, things I've read and discovered along the way. You know, but ultimately it comes down to experience, you know, my familiarity with the equipment. I've been playing these amps live and in the studio for 45 years now at this point. I know, hard to believe. I don't look that old. You know, I'd like to think that I've got a decent set of ears and a fairly solid knowledge of the workings of like an analog recording studio. I've spent enough time in them. I have one here. You know, so I guess what I'm saying in all of this is that what I'm presenting, don't take it as gospel, I guess, per se, but rather that my assumptions and speculations are founded in something more than just aimless speculation. You know, it's thousands of actual tracking tests with different variables, and I systematically rule out theories, ideas, and speculations, and you know, through the tracking and the listening back and the experimenting. So the thing to also keep in mind, you know, that I keep in mind, it's kind of my guiding principle, is that if my theories start to get too complicated, if I'm doing too much manipulation to get to the sound, or if I have to twist myself and the gear into something that's just too complex, at that point I know I'm headed down the wrong path. So again, what I say all the time is use your ears. I mean, they're the best tool that you have to get you through all this stuff. I'd also like to touch on, you know, the ISO tracks that are all over the internet and have been for a while. Don't rely on those for tone matching. There are very few that exist that came from the actual tapes. And those that did came from the 24-track tape. So that means that they haven't been mixed down to a stereo 2-track, which means that there was another round of equalization that happened as they got mixed down to 2-track, and then they got mastered after that, which is another, maybe a slight compression adjustment, slight EQ adjustment across the whole mix. So what you're hearing isn't really what it sounds like on the record. Okay. The ones that you do hear that aren't the obvious raw 24-track recordings, and those do exist, but the few and far between. Those were extracted with software, and now it's being done more accurately with AI stem extractions, which, as I said, are much more accurate than the ones that have been floating around for a number of years now. But don't rely on those for like the final album sound. Use your ears. Those ISO tracks are great resources to hear the genius of Ed's playing, you know, and just to listen and marvel at it. That's what I use them for. All right, so let's talk about the recording of these. Let's talk about some of the variables that we face coming into this project. There are multiple studios involved, and I know we're usually used to just dealing with Sunset Sound and Westlake for Van Halen 2. Tracked at Sunset, mixed at Westlake for Van Halen 2. But for the 82 collection, Diver Down, the story goes, or the history goes, Pretty Woman was tracked at Sunset Sound and mixed at Sunset Sound. When that became a radio hit, Warner Brothers said, you guys got to get back into the studio, but Sunset Sound had more time, didn't have any time for them in the time frame needed to get something, recorded and released. So they went to Amigo Studios, which was Warner Brothers' home studio, or the one that it was just the Warner Brothers studio that they owned. So they got them booked into Amigo. So Diver Down is recorded at 2 different studios and mixed at 2 different studios. It sounds different. Because of that engaged different types of equipment being used to do the actual tracking and recording. I mean, similar, but it's going to be different, and different sounds, different sounding rooms. And then, of course, 1984 was tracked and mixed at 5150. And what you got to realize about 5150, that was the first album that was being built pretty much while they were recording it, and it was not what you would consider a well-appointed studio. So there, again, a lot of variables. The equipment was changing while they were building 5150. Originally, they started out with a 3M M56 16 track 2-inch, and then I understand that Don Landee was looking for. He thought we're not going to make it with a 16, so we need a 24 track. At what point of the recording of 1984 did that transition take place? I don't know. The console was a really old. I'm pop up some pictures of the channel strips. There's only 2 band EQ. Another thing we really have to talk about, how the tone changes through the catalog. It's guitars, it's changes in the amplifier, it's changes in studios, but something that gets overlooked a ton is tuning. As we get to 82 and 84, a lot of the songs are in standard pitch. Not all of them, but a lot of them are at standard pitch, or on some on 1984, they're actually slightly above standard pitch. So it's probably one of the biggest factors in the evolution of Ed's guitar sound. So I recommend that you pay attention to that. And I also recommend that everybody look up a fellow by the name of Alan Garber. Look him up on YouTube. He's got the Peterson strobe tuning profiles for a substantial amount of the Van Halen catalog. He's also a fantastic resource for all things Van Halen and music for that matter. He's got the best transcriptions out there too. I know I drive him a little nuts because I always sort of wing it when I do these parts, when I play on these videos and everything. But anyway, look him up. He's a fabulous resource for you, and it will help you with the tunings. So let's get into it. I'll do this like I do most of my videos, where but it's going to be a deep dive. I'm going to try to show you as much about the equipment that I know and how, because there's a lot of variables in this collection. There's a lot of album tones and a lot of variation. So you'll be able to experiment a lot and help you dial in on your equipment with your guitars how to do it. So let's get into it. As everybody knows, there's always been a ton of speculation about all kinds of things when it comes to the tone, the Van Halen, the Brown sound, whole thing, and what Ed was really up to. One that keeps coming up and one that keeps being repeated is the Load Resistor. This is a thing that I think, well, we know it was used for sure on the 5150 tour. But it was a full-on load resistor. So what I did in this collection in 80 for the 82-84, I did something that nobody's really talked about. Everybody talks about a load resistor where you're sucking up all the output of the amplifier, and then that goes to feed another power amp, whether it's another Marshall amp or like a solid state power amp, like an H&H power amp, like Ed used in the later, not the later years, but I think he started using them perhaps on the 84 tour. I don't remember. I know for sure 5150. The way I'm using this load resistor, well, let me backtrack. So in the 82-84 collection, and especially on 1984, the guitar sound is so clean. It's so, the fizz is out of it. It's not the same guitar sound that we had through the first 4 albums. So you had, Van Halen 1, Van Halen 2, Women and Children First, and Fair Warning. And you had all that grit and fizz and that classic Marshall super lead, cranked up, every knob on 10, variac down, getting fuzzed out and everything. 1984, especially, if I hear a little bit of it on Diver Down too, but in 1984, trying to get to that clean sound that's on there. I mean, you can argue that Panama, Panama's kind of fuzzy. Panama's pretty dirty. But it's still different. It's a different kind of dirt, and it's got more spank to it. So, and when you listen to like the Flying V tracks, Hot for Teacher, Girl Gone Bad, and Drop Dead Legs, it's pretty clean. And it's hard to get a Marshall Super Lead to get that clean. You turn the volume 1 down, and then it gets too brittle bright. You lose the sustain. You don't necessarily lose. I mean, it's not the gain that you're worried about. You're still trying to make it a big full guitar sound, a big warm guitar sound. And then people will say, well, it's the PAF pickup. Well, no, because he was using the PAF pickup on the first 2 albums, and there's a lot of stuff going on there, a lot of gain. It's not really gain, but it's just the way the amp doing what the amp does, the Marshall Super Lead. So about how I ran this dummy load, and this is my theory, but I think it's probably pretty accurate. And I know that Ed mentioned it at least as a live thing. And again, speculation as to what exactly he was talking about. But in the April 80 interview for Guitar Player magazine, he talked about the stick of dynamite hanging off the back of the amp. Well, he said it went to the fuse holder. I don't think it came out of the speaker jack. So what I did, it's not a dummy load in that you're sucking up all the output of the amplifier. I call it a parallel dummy load. So there's a 4x12 speaker cabinet that comes straight out of the speaker jack out of the amplifier. So it's going straight into a 4x12 cabinet, and then you plug this in to the speaker jack in the back of the amp that's right next to the one you just plugged the 412 into. So you're putting this, consider this like another speaker cabinet of sorts. So what does it do? You still get that direct signal coming to the 4x12. You still get a substantial amount of volume pushing into that 4x12, but you're taking away, I'm just going to take a stab here, it's like 3 dB, which is substantial. So you're taking 3 dB of level off of the output of the amp. But at the same time, electronics guys will probably get mad at me or probably try to correct me or something, but I'm using this term incorrectly probably. But for whatever reason, the resistor, it rolls a little bit of high end off. Not like you do when you dummy load something and it just sucks all the high end out of it and just sounds like you threw a blanket over the speaker cabinet. It doesn't quite do that when you're running it parallel with the speaker cabinet. It takes some of the volume away, which makes complete sense for Ed's situation. And it gets rid of some of that fizz. So the term I've been calling it is like this flyback, this high end, somehow it quells the flyback coming back out of the output transformer, whatever that means. Techs are going to look at me like, what the hell is the guy talking about? But what I'm talking about is that the high end gets a little bit rounder. You know, all that noise that you have when you're playing, it's really hard to play clean when you're playing loud, and the string squeaks and that sort of thing. All of that kind of disappears. The amp gets a little tighter, a little bit, both the top end and the bottom end kind of just round off a little bit. A lot of the flub goes away on the bottom end, and maybe you get a little bit more mid-forward. So when you listen to like Hot for Teacher, that's pretty mid-forward. So is Girl Gone Bad. That the guitar sound is pretty mid-forward, yet it's not super bright too. When he's playing the leads, the high E string, the upper notes are pretty rounded off, and they're not shrill or bright, which they would be sort of with just a PAF, like in the Flying V. So it has the illusion, I guess, of pulling the gain out of the amplifier. It's pulling that high-end energy out of the signal. And then you can add it back in when you're mixing. I mean, it's not a bunch. It's kind of a subtle thing. So you add it back in. Whereas on the other hand, if you don't use the resistor, the parallel resistor, if you don't use that, you find yourself, in order to get the guitar sound to get clean enough to do what's happening on 1984, is you have to push the mid-range in the guitar. Because when you scoop mids, you'll notice guitars get fuzzier, they get fizzier, you get that reverse frown curve thing, and everything gets fizzier, and it gives the appearance of being more gainy. The opposite happens when you push the mid curve. When you do I say this was the reverse. This would be the actual smile curve. Then you've got the frown curve. So when you do the frown curve, it cleans it up. But you do that just on the EQ on the console. And so when you're recording, but you're making some pretty drastic moves, and you're rolling off a fair amount of high end to get that to round over. So in this collection, I gave it to you both ways. So you've got the parallel load options, and you've got the no parallel load options. So you decide. I mean, for me, for the V, I think it's almost definitely the parallel load. Panama, I'm kind of give it one of these. You know, it could go either way, but it's definitely, I think definitely part of the equation, and that's why I wanted to include it in this collection. All right, so here we are in Logic, and I've got Tonex open. Tonex is being used as an insert here in Logic. This is for little guitars, so I'm going to show you. This is just the setup I've got for little guitars. Each one of these is different. Everything on this album is mixed differently. Now, if you listen to the actual album, Diver Down, and you listen to little guitars, the guitar is panned pretty hard left. It might not be fully hard left, but it's pretty hard left. So let's start with that. Let me play the track. This is what I recorded for the video here. So that's panned all the way hard left. You hear the effects going off on the right side, and on both sides actually. You hear it. So as I come back closer to center, the dry guitar is coming more towards the center, or it is in the center. So you may want to do that if you're just playing, especially if you're playing with headphones. If you're playing through like studio monitors, you might like the guitar all the way over on the left. It's complete, you know, whatever preference you have. And of course, if you're setting up to play with the Tonex pedal, everything is going to be straight up the middle, because if you're within the Tonex ecosystem, you can't pan left or right. It's just all straight up the center of the mix. But this, what I'm doing here is setting up in Logic, so I'm just showing you how we're getting these sounds. So you can hear that I'm running chorus. See, when it's panned, you can really hear that chorus. And then the chorus is going to shut off here for the riff. So pretty cool. As far as here, I'll show you what we're doing here on Tonex too. Pretty much for other than secrets here in Tonex, for my guitars and my setup, I used this one album tone model, and it's Good Times 73 volt Load Resistor, warm and tight. That's what this is, and it's using the Celestion 20 watt greenbacks. Okay, that's what this capture is. That's what this tone model is. So let me close this out so you can see the Variac. You can see the Load Resistor up here. Pretty cool, right? If you'll notice, for this one, I had to turn the gain down a little bit just because that little guitar that Ed used is super, super clean. And in order to get the chorus to pop and everything, I had to set it up that way. As far as the chorus settings in Tonex, this is what I use for that. I didn't use any outboard chorus. I didn't use any chorus in the Logic program. It's all here in Tonex. So it sounds really good, and I've got it set up to pre, not post. Okay. So I'm going to shut this down, and let's take a look at what I'm running here. So I'm running the Sunset Sound Reverb. Now keep in mind that this was recorded at Amigo Studios. It was not recorded at Sunset Sound. So I'm making an assumption that they had a plate reverb. So I'm using a plate reverb in Sunset Sound. I've got a little bit of pre-delay, 30 milliseconds. I'm rolling out some of the low frequencies out of it and adding a little bit of high frequencies to make the reverb, that plate reverb, shimmer a little bit more. And it's actually the Ross Hogarth bright chamber setting, but I change it to a plate. I don't use the chamber. I'm using plate number 1. Okay, and then there is an Eventide harmonizer running. I'm running that as an auxiliary. On bus 3, I got the reverb on bus 2, so you can see here on the Tonex channel, and this is the way all of these are going to be set up. So I'm sending one send is going to aux 1 or bus 1. I'm not using that on this. This is for the Quantum reverb that we use on 1984. Bus 2 is going to the Sunset Sound reverb. So you can see I got bus 1, the room simulator reverb, muted for this. Send 3 is going to bus 3, and that's the harmonizer. That's what we're looking at right here. And you can see the levels that I'm running it at, straight up the center. Reverb is straight up the center. And bus 4 is going to another harmonizer, but that's also muted because I'm not using it. I'm using one harmonizer, and I'm using the Sunset Sound reverb with a plate reverb. And that's how we're getting the little guitars sound. I should also add that this is essentially the same setup that I'm using on the Pretty Woman Capture 2, because that's also that has chorus on it. So I'm using the Tonex chorus for that also. Even though the actual chorus used was a Roland DC-30, and I do have the EVH, or the Dunlop EVH chorus pedal. I forget what they call it exactly. It's the MXR one. I had too much noise with it, and because it's stereo, unless I ran it through the console, it wasn't going to sound right. So I just decided to go with the Tonex, which sounds really good anyway. So I'm happy with that. Let's talk about the Tonex presets, the Tonex tone models, what the actual sound, some people call them patches, some people call them presets, some people call them tone models. The official language of IK Multimedia and the Tonex is that these are tone models, so the sounds, the captures. I want to clarify, this has been the subject since the first 78, 79 Brown Sound collection came out, and I should have brought it up more on the 80, 81 collection. Those names that those captures are named, that the tone models are named, do not in any way, shape, or form represent any song that's listed on any album. Contrary to how those tone models are named, they are not referencing a song. I built these collections for more of the tone chaser mentality, but also make it accessible to the more casual player that wants to get just a great guitar sound, and just go through and pick your favorite ones, whatever the name of that favorite one is. When you look at what we call the metadata and how what's really in the collection, what's really in that tone model, it's, to me, I set it up with different speaker cabinets, different variac settings, and then you could pick between what you think fits best for what your ears hear, or what your guitar wants to sound like through the system, or however you're listening to it. I've got studio monitors right here, so that's how I set everything. So I try to make it as accurate and as flat as possible so it works across all systems. So don't fall into the trap that what these are named as are referencing any kind of song. Now, there is some exception, because there's a Top Jimmy tone model in 1984, and there is a Secrets tone model for Diver Down. I don't think there's the other special ones, but those will be. I'm not even sure how they're labeled, because I haven't seen the names yet for the 82, 84 collection. And I barely looked at the 80, 81 collection, but I do know that we made some improvements on how you can search within Tonex to find what you're looking for, whether it be like a variac setting or something like that, or the speaker cabinet. Also, in the name, we're trying to include as much of the tone chaser data in the name of the tone model. So it might say 78 volt, then Juliet's Delight or something like that. And then you'll see raw or room or amp only, because we are doing amp only captures in both of these collections too. So you can search by the raw or the room or the amp, but you have to search amp and pedal, because I had pedals in front. So that was kind of I don't know if we complicated it a little bit too much in the search feature, but you can still find them and separate them. And then the rest are album tones. So they're interpretations on Diver Down, especially. As I was going through and creating these album sounds for Diver Down, whether I was using the Load Resistor or whether I wasn't using the Load Resistor, I found that for whatever reason, the mids would greatly alter, and depending on what guitar you picked up and played, and I know everybody out there's got a different guitar and different pickups and different setups and everything. So I wanted to be really aware of that, and I wanted to make it as adjustable as possible for everybody that's playing, for whatever type of guitar you've got. And the other thing too, when you're in the interface, I intentionally also set everything, all the knobs, the volume or the gain, the bass, middle, treble, and volume, all set to 5, all set to, or straight up noon. That's the way I created them. That's the way the profile is created, or the tone model is created. So you can adjust for your guitar. If you're using a higher output pickup, in most cases, if you want to sound close to the album, you're going to turn that gain knob down, that first one. You're going to turn that down to 3.5 or 4 maybe. If you want to push more gain, feel free. But that's not, I mean, like initially when the 78, 79 collection came out, and I think I've said this before, I saw some guys online demoing it, and they were turning everything up on 10. Don't do that. I mean, do it if you want, but that's not how you get to the sound that I created to try to do the album tones. I wanted this to be as adjustable as possible, if all that makes sense. And about the raw and the room captures, I mean, I know the amp only captures are obvious. You guys want to use their own IRs or that sort of thing, and that's cool. And you've got there's some great amp captures in there. The raw in the room, why would I do something like that? I did that so that you can create your own sound. So you're eliminating the album post-processing that we do here on the console. Like we're actually recording those albums and what we do to the guitar sound. So the album tones are that post-process sound. The raw is the no post-process. It's just what those SM57 microphones are hearing on the speaker cabinet. Obviously going through the analog rig, but no EQ applied, no post-processing applied. And the room is just a capture, is exactly what it sounds like. It's a large condenser microphone backed away from the speaker cabinet to capture some of the room. So it's not a close mic sound, and it's there so that when you create your own sounds, like you would take the raw sound and you would take a room sound and you would open up two instances. And I'm going to show you how I do this in Logic for Secrets, because I did this intentionally on Secrets, and I'll show you how I get a really good sound to do that, to recreate that 12-string sound. So then you blend the two together. So you've got the raw sound and you've got the room sound, and you're creating your own thing. So that's what that's all about. So again, no connection to any song title. None. So let's not do that debate. Hopefully we've made a good compromise on these two collections, and it will be a little bit less confusing. And there's more in the title of the actual tone model, the actual capture. So I think that covers that side of it for now. Okay, so here is the Secrets setup. Really, this one's pretty simple too. I had to create a tone model for this one. That's why I did a special one. That's why you've got Good Time 73 volt Load Resistor Secrets. I kind of had to, without going into too much detail, I had to trick Tonex a little bit and figure out a way to get it's not important. it's just, I had to kind of fool it. All right, so it is still it's the Marshall and everything. It's all of that. I'm running just one track of guitar, and I'm running it into a Sunset Sound reverb. Again, it's the Hogarth Bright chamber, but since this was recorded at Amigo, I'm using the plate because they didn't have the Sunset chambers, obviously. So reverb straight up, and it's running a harmonizer, an H910, and the harmonizer's not harmonizing, it's just doing a little bit of what H910s do. They just do a little modulation. But the cool thing that I'm doing with this, to kind of diffuse some of that sound some of that modulation sound coming from the harmonizer, I'm actually sending the output of the harmonizer into the reverb. So I'm running reverb from the harmonizer and I'm running reverb from the guitar. So they're getting blended at the stereo output. So here, let's just listen to what that sounds like. So that's just the harmonizer with its reverb. That's when you add everything back in. And here's a cool thing, if you want to, let me close this a minute. So if you want to run more of a DI signal, like there's a couple of ways I could clean this up. Just take a little bit of that grit out of here. I click on the advanced and see this mix knob here. So let's just play this again. So what that's doing is it's blending the DI, which the DI sounds like this if I shut Tonex off. So you've got a lot of options there, or I could turn the gain back a little bit, clean it up. So anyway, super simple. Again, just a little bit of harmonizer, but the harmonizer feeding the reverb. So that's you'll start to see me doing that a lot on this and on 84 to start to diffuse the reverb, or I'm sorry, to diffuse the harmonizer so it's not so abrupt sounding. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the guitars used on 82, the 82 portion of the 82-84 collection, which is Diver Down. So, Secrets, done with a Gibson ES 1275, the double neck. This is my Greco. Those of you that have followed me are also familiar with this guitar. Just the Greco 12. It's got the original Maxon pickups in it. They are not Super 70s. They are the Maxon, I think, U1000s in this one. So that's pretty much all that I used for that for the Secrets portion of this. Then there's the other specialty guitar. This is my mini guitar. This is the little guitar for little guitars. And Ed used a Dave Petulat custom-made mini Les Paul to do this one. So this is my closest approximation. I've got a 57 classic humbucker here. I mean, the Petulat mini Les Paul had mini humbuckers in it too, so I tried to get it to sound as close as possible, and you hear that in here. Okay, and then so for Cathedral, I recommend using a Stratocaster. No, I didn't shoot a video for Cathedral for this particular pre-release video. I didn't shoot one. But it was done on a regular Stratocaster, regular single coil Strat. And just set the appropriate delay time. Just pick your favorite patch in the 82 collection, or your favorite preset, your favorite tone model, and set the appropriate delay and a little bit of chorus on it, and you'll be right there. So other than that, 82 Diver Down is kind of as far as guitar sound goes, it's kind of a one-trick pony. There's not a lot of variation other than the guitars and the effect that's used. There is a chorus that's used. It's obvious on Pretty Woman. It's obvious on Little Guitars. So add that, and actually you can make the one that's built right into Tonex. You can make that sound really accurate. It actually fits really well for this application. So this guitar, my Frankenstein. Again, a lot of you know this guitar, Northern Ash body, maple neck with the maple fingerboard, the maple slab fingerboard. There's no skunk stripe on it. The pickup in this. Now, again, those of you that follow me know that I'm constantly playing with pickups, and I've been trying to find the right formula for a long time to see what was really in the Frankenstein. And it's pretty well known that for the recording of Fair Warning, pretty much everything came off the Bumblebee. And that includes the Floyd Rose, the neck, and the pickup. And the pickup that was in there was the Super Distortion with the A5 magnet in it that Ed had made. So I believe that, like the EVH Frankenstein pickup, that is a close approximation of the Super Distortion. So the original EVH Frankenstein pickups were 13.6K, which is about what a Super Distortion pickup is. Ed put he took the ceramic magnet out and put an A5 in. In creating these collections, I was using an EVH Frankenstein pickup with a short A5 magnet in it. And it's super close. It's right on target. And the EVH with the A2, with the Degaust A2 sounds fine. You can get by with a lot of different pickups, and there's a lot of adjustment within these collections. And I gave you a lot of variables as far as the captures go, so you can hopefully match your guitar with the right pickup, the body wood, and everything. You can get the sound that you need to get out of this, what you're hearing out of these collections. So this pickup that's in here now, and what I shot these videos with for this video, is the one that we've been working on with my buddy Paul McKeever up in Canada. We're calling it he's calling it the GFW 80, which is it's the Gausted Fair Warning 80, 1980, and it's got it's all PAF stuff here. So it's like a PAF recreation that Seymour Duncan most likely did to the pickup that was in Ed's Frankenstein. Once the DiMarzio came out, the DiMarzio with the A5, once that DiMarzio came out of the guitar, Seymour rewound that original PAF that was in the guitar with the short A5 to match that DiMarzio Super Distortion with the A5 magnet in it. So that's what we did. There's a little bit more secret sauce that goes into it, but that's the gist of it. And I know Paul is starting to sell these and manufacture these, so you can buy it. But that's what I used. I love it. The big problem that I have with like the EVH Frankenstein and the 78 and most modern pickups is that the pickup manufacturers wind too much, and I say this loosely, they wind too much bottom end into the pickup because nobody plays at high volume anymore. So you're playing quietly with master volumes and attenuators, and you're trying to get that bottom end out of the guitar sound that comes when you turn the volume up naturally. So I always run into a problem with that because when I use the more modern pickups and you turn the amp up and you're playing at a loud volume, you get too much buildup on the bottom end, and you end up it's way too huge sounding. It's way too full in the mids, or on the low mids and in the bottom end. So that's what this pickup does. It's what the DiMarzio does. If you ever notice, DiMarzio Super Distortions don't have a lot of bottom end. They're just kind of even. This pickup is super even across the frequencies, and it's just perfect for recording. It's perfect for playing live. It's perfect for it's the Van Halen sound, in my opinion, of anything 81 and beyond. That as long as he was still using the Frankenstein. So I hope that helps clarify. Okay, for the full bug, hang 'em high, where have all the good times gone? You know, I had mentioned that Diver Down is kind of a one-trick pony on the guitar, on like the rock and guitar songs. They're all kind of the same. The solo and Dance It in the Streets. You know, Pretty Woman too, as long as you shut the chorus off. But really no changes. I'm using the same tone model. Good Times, 73 volt on that's the Variax setting. Load Resistor, warm and tight. That's what this one is. So, and the setup here in Logic is super simple too. And it may look complicated, but that's all. That's kind of, I've got it set up for multiple different things. But if you really look at what I'm running, it's just the Tonex as the insert. I'm not running to bus 1. Well, I am, but it's not. Bus 1 is muted. That's because we're going to use that on the 84 captures. Bus 2 is going to the Sunset Sound reverb. And again, I'm running the plate because Amigo didn't have Sunset's chambers. And I'm running the harmonizer. As you can see, I'm running the harmonizer. Again, let's look at the harmonizer because I'm not, here is where you would set the pitch shift. There is no pitch shift going on. It's just that modulation. I'm running about 12% modulation on it. But I run the output of that harmonizer into auxiliary 2 or bus 2, which is that Sunset Sound reverb. So it's blending again. So I'm running a dry reverb from just the Tonex, and I'm running the harmonized reverb all into the stereo output. So you kind of get that diffused, the reverb diffused H910 harmonizer mixed in there. So it kind of takes some of the harshness out of that, the comb filter out of it. So that's the way we sound, and it's used. And again, I've got the guitar panned, and you can, mess with that, play with that. I've got it panned hard left because that's what it is on the album. If you put headphones on and listen to it. But you can move that towards the center. And we'll do that. When you're panned hard left too, the guitar gets a little bit warmer. I don't know what the phenomena is that causes that, but that's what happens. The effects seem to come up a little bit louder, and you get more of that. It's just more warmth and more. It's a larger, more spacious sound. So, but you run it any way you want to. Get creative with it. So now, as to the guitars I used for the 1984 portion of the collection here. So, as many of you probably know, Ed recorded a lot of 1984 with his 1958V, with the PAFs, the 58 PAFs in it. So, and this is integral too, is the type of tailpiece. He actually does a pick rake in jump that you can tell that it's the V. So he's playing jump with the V too. Plays the solo and jump with the V. But Girl Gone Bad, Drop Dead Legs, and Hot for Teacher, definitely all the V. So I use this to do that. I've got a 8K Gibson 57 Classic in here, and this is like a 7. I think this is a 7.8K 57 Classic. This is an Ibanez. It's one of the rocket rolls from the 70s, so it's not this. It's not Carina. It just looks like Carina. This is like ash. It's Japanese senwood. But it's a great guitar, and it's got the right bridge. It's got the string through, so you get all that, the proper stuff, the proper mojo. And it sounds really, really, really good. It's right on. The other guitars used, so 1984, we can speculate like the I'll Wait guitar solo probably is Kramer, that had the Floyd Rose. It was a Kramer Pacer. It had a Floyd Rose, a humbucker, and 2 single coils. That's probably used in the guitar solo during I'll Wait, because he's switching back and forth between the neck pickup and the humbucker, the bridge pickup. We can't be sure of that, but I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And the solo was comped, so he's switching pickups back and forth, so it's not like he's playing it live. They pieced that solo together. So the rest, House of Pain and Panama, are done on the Frankenstein. A lot of people think it's the 5150, but I don't think so. Those that are deep into the woods on this stuff are pretty sure that the 5150 wasn't used on 1984. The 5150 was available at the US Festival. It was there. He could have played it. He never played it during the US Festival. That means he had it while they were doing the sessions for 1984 at 5150, and you just don't hear that guitar on the album. So House of Pain and Panama on the Frankenstein. Now the other one that we have to concern ourselves with, the other strange guitar on the album, is the Ripley. The Ripley is the one that's got the Bartolini pickup in it. It's 6 pickups in one. So each of the 6 strings gets its own pickup. And if you listen to Top Jimmy with headphones on, he's got the different strings panned in the stereo spectrum. So you got strings pinging all over in your head on the intro and throughout some of the rhythm parts. Now that whole song is comped together and put together, and there's overdubs and there's multiple guitar parts. But the Ripley parts are kind of what I was trying to focus on. Now there's no way for me to duplicate the panning of the strings in the stereo spectrum. I can't do that because I don't have the Ripley pickup. And I didn't figure many of you did either, so why should we bother doing it? But I wanted to at least get a close approximation of what that sounds like. So I used a Telecaster to play the harmonic parts and a couple of the rhythm stabs on Top Jimmy. I had to do a little bit of serious modification to kind of even out the bass response on the guitar and everything. I had to really lower the pickup on the bass side to get that low E string to be not quite so loud. But by using a single coil pickup and the tone model that I created for Top Jimmy, you can get pretty darn close. And I'm going to show you how I did that in Logic too. So those are the guitars for 84. All right, here we go. This is the 1984. This is the Panama setup, and you can kind of use this as the basis for a lot of the 1984 setups, but I got to tell you, every one is slightly different. So if you're trying to match the album, each one of these effects deals is different. And again, if you want to do these things and get as close as possible but keep it simple, you can do a lot of this stuff right in the Tonex app. You can feather in a little bit of the built-in chorus. You can use the reverb. There's delay built in there, so you can kind of mix and play with that. But I'm going to show you how we do it in Logic, and this is how, probably pretty close to how they actually did it at 5150. So for Panama, and we're going to play this. So you're probably hearing a little delay slap, which you hear on the record. But I'm not running any delay, or there's no delay in here. So how am I doing that? I mean, there's not an actual separate delay device. So I'm running the Tonex. It's the program that I'm using, the tone model that I'm using is Bad Gal 68 volt, left, right. Hang on, let me move this over a little bit so we can click on the info button. I'm getting used to these preset names myself. So Bad Gal 68 volt, Load Resistor, hot. This is the 20 watt greenbacks. All right, so back to so you're hearing the echo. I'll move this over. And the reverb is different because we're no longer using the Sunset Sound reverb. I've got that muted because we're not at Sunset Sound anymore. We're at 5150, and 5150 had an RMS or an AMS. I think it's an AMS RMS 16, something like that. So you guys can correct me on that. A room simulator, a quantum room simulator. So that's what I'm running here on bus 1. And I'm doing the Royal Albert Hall as if it were full. And I mess a little bit with the reflections and the delay of the reflections, but pretty much stock setup. So that's the reverb that you're hearing. And I've got that here with Room Simulator on bus 1. And I'm doing the same thing I was doing on Diver Down, where I'm running to the harmonizer on bus 3. You can see that over here. And the output of the harmonizer is going into that room simulator. I'm diffusing that harmonizer a little bit with the reverb, but I'm also doing something a little bit different with the harmonizer. So Eventide 910s had all these little white buttons on the front of them, along with these knobs, these things where you'd set. They were, I mean, they're old. It's a thing from the 70s, but it's a really cool, unmistakable sound. So they had a delay built in with these push buttons. So as you add those push buttons up, you get a little bit of delay time built in. It's not a huge amount of delay, but that's that slap that you're hearing. So I'm running that Eventide delay. So it's delaying the reverb, therefore thickening up the reverb coming off of the harmonizer. I know it sounds complicated, but that's what you're hearing. So that's kind of the Panama trick. And there's a lot of that kind of goes on here on 1984, but like I said, each one is different. So I'm going to cover a couple more. I don't want to bore you with all this stuff, but there's just so much going on here that it's stuff you need to know. All right, Top Jimmy. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because, as I explained, not many of us, or I don't have one, and most of us probably don't have the Ripley guitar. There's so many guitar parts, there's so many overdubs, there's so many things going on this song. I just thought I would throw it in here because you can play with it, you can have a little fun with it. I created a special amplifier for it. I was doing my best to emulate what we believe he used, a pair of Music Man combo amps on this song. So I did my best to recreate that with an open back speaker cabinet and a different kind of, it's not my Marshall amp, it's a different kind of, like a homemade thing that I've got laying around here. Fender-ish. So that's what we're using here. And again, here's the Logic setup. It's a little bit, it's complicated. It's getting more complicated. So I'm running 2 harmonizers. Again, no pitch shifting, just that modulation. And I'm panning them. I'm running them left and right. So I'm panning it, one hard left and the other one hard right. Same level. I am running the outputs of those harmonizers back into the Quantum Room Simulator reverb. And I'm also running a dry signal into the Room Simulator reverb, or I should say the Tonex signal, the Music Man amp. So we're getting an unaffected reverb and a harmonizer affected reverb. And then I'm also running just another, like a DI over to another bus, and I'm running those through the harmonizer. Which in turn then runs back through the reverb. Complicated, yeah. So here's what that sounds like and looks like. So again, I just wanted to put that in there if you guys wanted to screw with it, mess around with it, and see what you can come up with. But there's just so many different guitar parts in there that it's really going to be a hard one to pull off live. But it's here. It's here if you want to mess with it. Drop dead legs, the logic setup. Again, all right, let's start with what amp I'm using. It's, again, the Bad Gal 68 volt load resistor hot version. But as you can see, I pulled the gain down slightly. I'm running at 4.5. I think I got the treble pulled back again. And again, I pull the treble back often because when I do these YouTube videos, sometimes they get a little bright or harsh or something like that. So it's just a subtle pull out on that, pull down of the treble. Drop dead legs has got a lot going on too, and it's a different technique that we're using with the harmonizers. So as you can see here in bus 3, again, quantum room simulator is bus 1. That's our reverb that we're using. I've got the Sunset Sound reverb in here, but it's muted. We're not using it. It's here on bus 3. I've got 2 harmonizers stacked, 2 H910 stacked on each other. So why do I do that? Well, the processing that happens, and it happens with the actual hardware units too, is they impart a natural delay then as they're processing. There's latency. And so that's how you're getting the slap back. That's how I'm getting the slap back. So let's listen to it. So if I shut off one of them, the slap goes away. See, kind of neat. And again, no pitch shifting going on, just that modulation trick that you do with the H910s. And you can see I'm trying not to diffuse that as much, so I'm not running the output of the harmonizers back through into the reverb, because I don't want to diffuse that slap back that's happening from the stacked harmonizers. So again, everything on this album is slightly different. It's mixed a little bit different. You just have to experiment, and I wanted to give you kind of a baseline and different examples of how all of this comes together. So I won't go any further. I won't do the other songs like Girl Gone Bad and House of Pain and Hot for Teacher. They're all variations on this theme. So you just use your ears, kind of figure it out. And again, if you want to do this and put it in the pedal, in the Tonex pedal, and build your own presets, you can feather in a little bit of that, just a little bit of that built-in chorus, and it gets you close to what the harmonizer is doing, because there is no pitch shifting going on. It's just that modulation happening with the H910. Is it perfect? No, but it gets you really close. And you've got the reverbs and you've got the delays. And you can experiment with putting the delays in front. You can put it or behind the amp. The chorus can go in front or behind. The reverb can go in front or behind. You've got a lot of options, and you can really craft a sound. So just have fun with it and use your ears. So wow. So wow. Here we are. That was a lot. That was a lot to take in. That was a lot to put together. That was a lot of stuff to go through. I'm going to leave this as everybody's been asking me for a 1984 deep dive, and I've been promising a 1984 deep dive. I've kind of gone as far as I could go on the deep dive with the IK Multimedia collection that is the 82-84 collection and what I've presented in this video. There are more things that can be talked about, but this is the nitty-gritty of it, and what got dialed in here and what was done and what was accomplished is the deep dive. Obviously, you can always reach out and ask me questions. I try to get to the questions, and I'm happy to when I can, and I get a lot of them. There's another thing I want to mention. I spoke earlier about the preset names not having any correlation to the songs, and that to further clarify a little bit, this is the Tone Chasers package. You put together, you use your ears and listen to the sounds that you want to use to create this sound. But I would highly recommend that you go to the IK Multimedia, the Brown Sound product page, the Brown Sound, like the 80-81 collection. It's on all of them. The Brown Sound 78-79, the Brown Sound 80-81, and the Brown Sound 82-84 collections. If you go to those product pages, those specific product pages, and you scroll down about halfway down to the bottom or halfway through that page, you'll see a preset list. So you can download that preset, and it'll help you figure out more what my names were and what I was putting together and what I was creating. So you'll get more insight information as to the voltages, the speaker cabinets, and all that sort of thing in the name. So, and we did try to make this more searchable. And it is more searchable than the 78-79 collection. So you can actually search for things. So I hope that really helps. All right, so I just want to, this has been a super long journey, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. And I've enjoyed the comments, and I've enjoyed the interaction with all of those that have been having fun with these collections. I want to emphasize that this is as close to adding a box, the Brown Sound in a box, that you'll get. But there are variables, and there are variables that we don't know, and there are variables that we can't do, especially here in the later catalog, because a lot of things changed. And a lot of the later guitar sounds became about post-production and different equipment and that sort of thing, and the harmonizers and all that sort of thing that we can't necessarily build in, but there's some cheats like I showed earlier. But I just want, the spirit of this collection is for those, and I did my best to make it as adjustable for all guitars. You don't have to have my custom pickups. You don't have to have the low wound pickups. You don't have to have the PAF style pickups. It helps. If you have that stuff, you will get very, very close to the album sounds and all that. All of that's involved in this. So it's not required, and like I said, I tried to make this as adjustable as possible so that it'll work with all pickups. But I want you, don't be afraid to experiment. There's no one way to do this. There's no one one and done. Everybody's got different speakers. Everybody's ears are a little bit different. So just use your ears. And again, it's been a long journey and it's been a lot of fun. And I appreciate that you have welcomed these collections. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I will see you soon.